Welcome back to more FPL content. This will be my team selection for Blank Gameweek 34. I have activated the free hit, so I'll be discussing my current 15-man squad, and there could be some changes by Saturday's deadline stream, and all the updates in terms of team news and injuries will be covered in that specific stream on Saturday morning in the UK. You can see my FPL challenge squad on screen, and I only got 25 points last week, so I definitely got some things wrong there. As you can see on screen, I captained Saka and the rest is history. But going into Gameweek 34, I'll be showing you my Blank Gameweek 34 squad, and essentially I might go a little bit different in terms of the picks I go for in FPL to kind of cover both worlds, but that strategy hasn't really paid dividends in recent weeks. Let me know what you're doing in this game mode, and also for Fantasy Premier League. Are you activating the free hit or making transfers? Maybe you're taking hits. There are a lot of different ways to tackle this game. But smash the like button of this video, subscribe to the channel, and also hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single upload or live stream for both UCL Fantasy and FPL. The Champions League will return next week, and that means more content for that specific format for deadline stream next Tuesday, and across the weekend there'll be a team selection video and also a best team podcast combining both the wildcard and the limitless into one. But if you want to see that in two separate videos, then you can also let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Like this video, all that good stuff. Check the links in the description, like my X, Instagram and Blue Sky, Dylan RCM, the Discord server, FPL and FPL Challenge Leagues, as well as Spotify, can also be found in the description. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. Sometimes in FPL, double gameweeks are simply overrated, and that's how I felt about 33. Of course, some people would have done very well this week with some single gameweek players like Mbumo doing the business, but David Raya got 7 points. It's not too shabby, a clean sheet against Ipswich Town, and ultimately had nothing to do in that game. But against Crystal Palace, he was so shaky and made an error which led to a shot. And for the first goal, I can't help but think he could have done a little bit better. And I think Arsenal ultimately were very poor on the day. Only Jakub Kiwior, who scored in the opening 3 minutes, was actually performing to a decent level. And I think Crystal Palace deserved that draw at the very least, and ultimately they were the better side of the two. Now with my defensive line, it was also fairly decent. Munoz, Saliba and Gavardio all did their thing in terms of keeping one clean sheet at least, but in the second game they were very disappointing. Munoz got booked and he also conceded twice to Arsenal, and William Saliba once again making an error at the back, just like he did against Real Madrid. So in UCL Fantasy and FPL, it seems like I jinxed these Arsenal players. I'll get onto Bukayo Saka very shortly. And with Gavardio, despite the frustrations against Aston Villa, I don't have too many reservations about him. I think Man City were a bit fortunate not to concede more goals, as Aston Villa registered 4 big chances and Rashford had 3 of his own. But in the first game he kept a clean sheet, and since signing him on the Gameweek 30 wildcard, he has kept several clean sheets, one against Man United, and he got maximum bonus points in the process, and the one against Leicester was kind of standard, but still, you never know of Man City this season. They've been poor defensively, yet they sit 4th in the Premier League table, not too far off Nottingham Forest, and they have a great chance of reaching the Champions League next season. So despite their kind of shortcomings, Man City can end up winning the FA Cup and finishing in the top 4, which isn't great, but still they can walk away from this season with something. But I can't say the same about midfield because it was pretty poor. Rodgers was the only one to get something with 7 points overall, but he got booked in the second game as well. Salah blanked against Leicester and he missed 3 big chances in the first half. And Bukayo Saka, he was subbed off before 60 minutes against Ipswich Town, and in the second game he was a substitute, which wasn't really too much of a surprise, and he also missed a big chance. And to be fair, I class that more as a Dean Henderson great save actually than Saka missing it. But in the first game against Ipswich, Saka should have got a big return in the first half alone, but he wasn't able to despite making 7 key passes, creating a big opportunity and also having 2 of his own. And as for Ismaila Sarr, he blanked in both matches, whilst Eze scored the equalising goal, the first one against Arsenal. It was a great effort by him, which also saw him on the bonus point sheet, whilst Ismaila Sarr was nowhere near it in both matches. He also missed a big chance after coming on as a substitute, and that was another thing about the second game of Double Gameweek 33 between Arsenal and Crystal Palace. A lot of these players were benched. Saka, Ismaila Sarr and also a certain Jean-Philippe Mateta up front, but it didn't stop him from scoring and he got 10 points in the end, so that wasn't too shabby. Isak blanked, Marmoush as my captain blanked in both matches, so only 4 points from him as a baseline score, and my bench was terrible. It's a good thing I actually bench boosted last week, even though I only got 12 points there. It would have been much better than the Gameweek 33 bench boost, which for most people would have been very disappointing unless you had Liverpool defenders, Brian Mbumo, Jarrod Bowen, and these sorts of players that could really boost you up those rankings. And speaking of which, it was my worst game week in quite a while. After 10 consecutive green arrows, I finally got a red of around 30,000 places, give or take. So I only got 62 points, and it was very frustrating. But in terms of my objective of finishing in the top 100k, I'm only 24 points away from it. And if I can get the free hit spot on, I can give myself a solid platform to get back into that sort of rank and end this season very strongly, because I've had good momentum recently, but Double Gameweek 33 has halted me in my tracks, and it's now time to bounce back with this Blank Gameweek coming up. Then it's a normal Gameweek, so to speak, in 35, followed up by a double in 36, and then a Blank Gameweek in 37, and then Gameweek 38 is always an entity of its own, with higher scoring games, less pressure in most cases, with many clubs achieving their objectives or having things settled, so there's not really much to play for. We'll see how that goes in a month's time, but everything you need to know will be covered on this channel, from suspensions, team news, injury updates, informed players, and much more of the captaincy, so you're well prepared for every single deadline. And that stream on Saturday will answer all your questions in tenfold, and the same goes for UCL Fantasy, with more content coming up very soon. But before I show you my free hit team and the transfers I'm looking to make in every single position, let me discuss the prices very quickly. Now, on the right hand side of your screen, you can see the team value, so squad value and money in the bank. That has changed drastically because I've activated the free hit, and it does look drastically different now because the players I've got a lot of value tied up in, I've sold on the free hit, but they will come back, of course, for Gameweek 35. So the likes of Raya have gone up in price in the last week, William Saliba, but the returns haven't really been great. Bukayo Saka, I mean, ultimately going for Trossard instead of him would have been brilliant. Also picking Eze over Sarr on the Gameweek 30 wildcard, and a few other decisions like Kivior instead of Saliba. All of that would have resulted in a green arrow this week, and it goes to show how fine margins can sometimes decide gameweeks such as these, which can be very frustrating from time to time. But ultimately with prices, I'm not too focused on that. I do show it just so you have an update in terms of what you think in terms of buying certain players, holding, and so you're well aware of what every single player costs. But this is the overall value, not the value I've got tied up in them. So the selling prices would be significantly cheaper, so to speak. But let's now move on to those transfer plans, which are going to be very important. I'll start off with the goalkeeper move, which is going to be very crucial. And at the moment, I'm leaning towards Nick Pope, which I discussed in my best free hit team video. Be sure to check that out for an in-depth analysis on every single pick on the free hit. And David Raya would make way. The same goes for my second goalkeeper. And if Jose Sarr remains injured, I could go for Bentley to triple up on Wolves there. But you could even feasibly start Bentley or Jose Sarr, depending on who's available, and triple up and really hone in on that Leicester fixture, which is now classed as a 1 out of 5 on the fixture difficulty rating. So it's got a new colour scheme on the FPL website, which is good to see. You can separate these difficult fixtures from the easy ones even easier now. But Nick Pope is one of my favourite goalkeepers, facing Ipswich Town at home. It was a 4-0 win for Newcastle early in the season, and I could see another clean sheet this time round. As for the defence, it is quite difficult, I think, but the likes of Munoz, Saliba and Gavardia will make way, and I am looking at that 1 week punt of Trent Alexander-Arnold. Using a chip like the free hit, you should try to hone in on these differentials or players with a high ceiling, and I think Trent Alexander-Arnold is one of them, and Sessegnon from Fulham, who played as a right wing against Chelsea, would be another one. But the main concern with both of these fullbacks is the minutes. Will they actually get 60 plus? I think that will be the case, but it isn't a guarantee, so you might end up going for Van Dijk and Robinson as more template but also safer options in those respective positions, and also to cover those teams defensively. I don't think Liverpool have an amazing chance of a clean sheet because Tottenham can still score in that game, but I think Liverpool will wrap up the league in style. They only need 1 point against Tottenham to secure the Premier League, and I think they'll get the victory here and potentially score 3 or 4 goals. And if that's the case, Trent Alexander-Arnold, who scored the winning goal against Leicester, can certainly be involved. But looking at the midfield, there are a plethora of options here, despite 4 teams blanking in Arsenal, Man City, Aston Villa and Crystal Palace. So going back to Cole Palmer from Bukayo Saka is definitely on radar, but Palmer is not locked in on my free hit by any stretch of the imagination. But he scored 4 goals against Everton last season in a 6-0 win, and he also has that high ceiling. He showed against Brighton in this campaign, Wolves away, but that was in the first half of the season, and I don't think he's been anywhere at it in the last couple of months. No goals in the last 16 games across all competitions, but I think it's only a matter of time before he scores, and he played fairly well against Fulham. He got 2 pre-assists, you could say. He was certainly involved in the second one, but I think Palmer needs to do much better with the goals and the assists, because that is pretty much the crux of his play, and that's why a lot of people rate him in FPL and also as one of the best players in the Premier League. But I'll also highlight the forward transfer that I really want to hone in on, and that's Matheus Cunha coming in for Marmoush. So a lot of these players were in my FPL squad in recent weeks, and I did buy Cunha around Gameweek 28, then he got suspended in the FA Cup but with that red card, missed Blank Gameweek 29 in the process, so he has been a bit frustrating recently. But when I bought him earlier this season around Gameweek 10, Matheus Cunha was a brilliant signing. He got massive returns, even against Fulham away, getting 16 points, and he's got that very high ceiling. He's a bonus points machine, very similar to Chris Wood. I think those two are great options on the wildcard and also on the free hit for Gameweek 34. I think longer term Chris Wood is a better asset, with Nottingham Forest having superior fixtures and a better team, but Wolves have won 5 consecutive games in the Premier League, and Cunha has an even better fixture in Gameweek 34. So on the free hit, I would favour Cunha over Chris Wood, but longer term it would be the other way around. So with all of that in mind, let me show you my provisional Blank Gameweek 34 free hit team, designed for this game week only, of course. And in goal, Nick Pope is my current preference, but I'm not ruling out Leno away to Southampton and a few other options like Bentley or Jose Sarr facing Leicester at home. They could all start as my starting goalkeeper. I need to pick only one of them though, and that's where things get very difficult. I think some people would also suggest Robert Sanchez against Everton at home, and Chelsea have a good record against the Toffees at Stamford Bridge with a lot of clean sheets in the process, so that is something I wouldn't rule out completely. But Nick Pope is currently my number one pick between the sticks, and if you've got any other suggestions, then let me know down the comment section below. As for my defensive line, I'd be very happy if they can match what my Double Gameweek 33 defenders and goalkeeper did with those 6 and 7 pointers. But Trent, Sessegnon and Aït-Nouri all have attacking potential. In the case of the Algerian, he has 4 goals and 6 assists this season. And whilst the stats aren't anything to really shout home about, they are still fairly solid for a 4.9 million defender. And Ryan Sessegnon has been getting so many goals and assists either off the bench or as a starter, and if he plays as a right winger for Fulham against the worst team in the Premier League, I think he can get a clean sheet and an attacking return combined. And you could even argue that it's worth doubling up on certain defences like Newcastle, Wolves or Fulham, but my current preference is to balance things out a little bit, so that's why I've got one of each, with Trent Alexander-Arnold completing this defensive line against Tottenham, and he's mainly there for the high ceiling. I'm not expecting him to score necessarily like he did in Double Gameweek 33, but a clean sheet and an assist, if he can combine both, I think that almost guarantees some bonus points in the process. But he hasn't really reached the same heights from last season or in previous campaigns because of the changes to the bonus point system, and I also think Liverpool have a more balanced squad in this Premier League campaign. Now, looking at the midfield, it is fairly solid but also quite template, you could say, with Salah, Palmer, Murphy and Kluivert, but I'm very tempted to start a player like Luis Diaz or Iwobi, whoever is my 5th midfielder. They would come in and potentially usurp one of my forwards, and I can go to a 3-5-2 formation. But my current preference is this 3-4-3, and I think Salah is a front runner for the captaincy. I wouldn't rule out Jacob Murphy. He isn't too far behind. Facing Ipswich Town at home, he got 13 points against them earlier this season, and whilst Palmer blanked against Everton back in December, he got that massive return against them at Stamford Bridge last time out, but his form is nowhere near to that same level. He was on fire around April last season, and Kluivert is facing Man United at home. He has 3 goals in just 3 appearances against the Red Devils. But my forward line is currently Raul Jimenez, Isak and Cunha, which you could argue is fairly template, but Jimenez has quite low ownership, and I'd only go for him if Rodrigo Muniz remains injured. He missed that game in Double Gameweek 33 for Fulham against Chelsea, and I think Jimenez will be much more appealing as a result. I also think Iwobi should be considered against Southampton away, but he has never scored against the Saints, and that's what puts me off a little bit in terms of including him in my 50-man squad on the free hit. But my bench is looking very strong. You could arguably bench boost this, but remember, you can't combine 2 chips at the same time. So if you've got the assistant manager active, you can't use any other chips in that free Gameweek spell. And if you're free hitting this week, then yeah, the bench boost is simply not an option. But I've got Bentley, the likes of Luis Diaz, Kirkes and Milenkovic, and you could even argue Milenkovic doesn't deserve inclusion here because Brentford Nottingham Forest could end up being a game where both teams score and the likes of Milenkovic don't return, but he is there to offer a bit of squad depth and value. You can even cheap out your bench and just have one good option there and then focus your funds on the starting 11, but I've got 2.5 million in the bank with this 50-man squad, so funds are no issue for me whatsoever, but there could be bench points and a few headaches and also regrets about who I'm starting, and I think Luis Diaz on the bench could be one of them. He also got a brace against Tottenham earlier this season, and if I were to include him in the starting 11, it would likely be for Raul Jimenez, who has done very well against Southampton in the past. He's got a great record against them, and he currently is in the lineup, but that isn't set in stone. Even Justin Kluivert or Cole Palmer could drop out of the starting 11 or from my 50-man squad entirely, especially in the case of Cole Palmer, who has been so poor in the last couple of months, and Bentley could start over Nick Pope. So things need to be ironed out, I think, in terms of a few details, mainly with the goalkeeper and my last attacker, but I'm quite happy with my defensive line. You could definitely go a bit safe with Robinson over Sessegnon, but with my rank and also me playing the free hit, I want to be a little bit adventurous at least, and I haven't done that enough in recent weeks in my opinion, especially in Double Gameweek 33, so I think this is a good opportunity to go a bit different with certain picks and really hone in on these one gameweek punts with the free hit and bolster my chances of securing a green arrow. And before I show you the expected points and also my team in future game weeks, let me discuss the captaincy, which is going to be very close. There are 3 standouts for me in Cunha, Isak and Salah, and I've currently got the armband on Alexander Isak, who only has 1 Premier League hat-trick, but it came against his upcoming opponent, Ipswich Town, away from home, of course, on that occasion, and now he's facing them at St James's Park. But Isak has been overshadowed by the likes of Harvey Barnes and Jacob Murphy in recent weeks, and Salah hasn't shown great form in the last month or two. I think there's definitely been a drop-off there, but against Tottenham, he has a great record against them, and I could see him scoring and assisting, or potentially scoring a brace. He is closing in on several Premier League records, including the most assists in a single season, 20 set by Thierry Henry and Kevin De Bruyne. Salah is currently on 18, so I think you can easily break that. It seems to be a cursed record, so to speak, but I think Salah is probably the one to do it if anyone can. And in terms of Cole Palmer, if this was last season, he'd be right up there in my captaincy list, but that isn't really the case now, and Everton have been very difficult to beat under David Moyes, but you could feasibly captain any single one of these attackers and Luis Diaz, who's on the bench, but I'm not really feeling any of these defenders in terms of captaining. I think if Trent had a better fixture like Leicester at home and I was confident of him starting, then absolutely he'd be one of the top shouts, but he's facing Tottenham at home. I think it could be like a 3 or 4-1 Liverpool win, and I think the midfielders and forwards look far more appealing to captain, but sometimes these defenders can surprise you and it's a high risk, high reward scenario. Any of these defenders can be feasible captaincy options. Sessegnon because of the position he's playing in and the recent attacking form, and Aït-Nouri always has that goal or assist in his locker, and he's facing one of the worst teams in the Premier League who have also gone down to the Championship. But Kluivert against United, I wouldn't rule him out as a captaincy option for people watching. I'm not really on board with that in terms of ranking him above Salah, Cunha or Isak personally, and you will see my full captaincy list in the deadline stream, and Jacob Murphy is also in that top 5, which might surprise some people watching, but I think his minutes are more secure than Harvey Barnes, who also has Anthony Gordon to contend with. But let's now discuss the expected points according to Fantasy Football Hub and see what they suggest in terms of who I should play. So Nick Pope has a 4.1 expected points figure. Trent, Sessegnon and Aït-Nouri have decent figures. I think Sessegnon's is a bit underwhelming, but that could be increased quite significantly over the coming days. Salah, Palmer, Murphy and Kluivert is what you would expect. Salah has 8.1. He's always around that mark despite his recent form. Jimenez, Isak and Cunha also have solid shouts and good numbers there. But I think with Jimenez, it would be even higher if Rodrigo Muniz was ruled out definitively. So Diaz does have a higher expected points figure than Raul Jimenez, and Fantasy Football Hub do recommend starting him, and I do think that could be one of my changes from now until the deadline stream. And the likes of Kirkus and Milenkovic have nothing really to write home about. The same goes for Bentley, who's got a very low tally, but Jose Sarr and his fitness is what's very important. If it's Jose Sarr who's available, I would go for him over Bentley and potentially start him and triple up on Wolves against Leicester City. So I think the teams you should be really kind of targeting in terms of the investments would be Newcastle, Wolves, Liverpool and Fulham, and you can also go for 1 or 2 players from Bournemouth, Chelsea and a few other teams here or there. Maybe you're fancying Brentford to get a result against Nottingham Forest or vice versa. I think Brandon Boomer and Vissa are always good options and they're fixture proof, but I'd rather invest in them from Gameweek 35 and beyond. That is my current plan. For Gameweek 34 specifically, I'd rather avoid that fixture, despite Brentford potentially having an advantage because Nottingham Forest will have played the FA Cup semi-final only a few days prior, so their focus could be taking off a little bit, and that could really help Brentford get a result there. But I'm anticipating a draw, which you'll also see in the deadline stream with my predictions and all the graphics you need, team news, injury updates, so you've got the full picture for Blank Gameweek 34 and beyond. It's also worth looking ahead to future game weeks like 35, and my current team would be David Raya in goal at home to Bournemouth, and doubling up on the Arsenal defence with William Saliba, which I'm not completely sure about, but I'm very happy with the rest of the starting 11, with Gavardio and Marmoush facing Wolves at home, Milenkovic away to Crystal Palace, Rodgers facing Fulham at home, Murphy and Isak away to Brighton. Of course, Saka is a good option, I think, for the captaincy against Bournemouth, and he did very well at the Emirates last season. Salah away to Chelsea. He doesn't have a great record at Stamford Bridge, but his record against the top six is always very impressive. And I've also got Mateta at home to Nottingham Forest, and after that great goal and performance off the bench against Arsenal, I think people might be keen to keep him for 1 or 2 more weeks after Blank Gameweek 34, but I still think he's worth selling in some cases, and Chris Wood would be a standout replacement. On the bench, I got Verbruggen at home to Newcastle, Sarr and Munoz facing Nottingham Forest at home, and Livramento away to Brighton. So that's the current setup for Gameweek 35 without making a single transfer, and I would still have only 1 available move after free hitting in Gameweek 34. And for Double Gameweek 36, this is not set in stone, and I'd probably make a few transfers to get more Double Gameweek players, but remember, these teams will eventually blank in 37, and with the current projections, the likes of Tottenham, Aston Villa, Man City, and Bournemouth would all double in 36. So I could have Verbruggen away to Wolves, Milenkovic facing Leicester at home, Gavardio and Marmoush potentially facing Southampton away, and Bournemouth at home, Munoz and Mateta away to Tottenham, which isn't the greatest, you could say, especially for Munoz, but he can get a goal or assist in that particular match. I've also got Saka away to Liverpool, which I'm not too keen on, Murphy and Isak facing Chelsea at home, Salah facing Arsenal at home, and that is a fairly decent 11, but I think free hitters in Gameweek 36, for example, or maybe just people who have set up better for Double Gameweek 36, they could have a clear advantage over me if I don't really sort out my team here for the specific double, and a lot will change potentially based on the FA Cup final and who will reach that stage for Wembley in Gameweek 37, because ultimately I'm going to have to invest in different teams if I want more Double Gameweek assets in 36, and all of that will be covered once again on this channel. On the bench, I'd have David Raya and Saliba away to Liverpool, and I'd keep Saliba as far away as possible from my starting 11, Sarr away to Tottenham, and Livramento facing Chelsea at home. And I actually have a starting 11 for Blank Gameweek 37 with the current projections, but I do have some clashes like Arsenal facing Newcastle, so I've got a triple up in both teams, which isn't great. And with free transfers available, I can bolster my Double Gameweek 36 prospects and or Blank Gameweek 37, which will be a difficult balancing act. After using the free hit this week, I'll have no chips remaining this season, but I think with a hit or two, it will be possible for me to navigate this double and the blank very efficiently. But what you see here is just a visualization of how my team looks like right now without making any actual transfers in future game weeks, and it goes to show there are so many different chip strategies and plans to tackle this season in FPL. We are now approaching the end game of Fantasy Premier League this season. That is the Gameweek 34 team selection, focusing specifically on this blank Gameweek, but also some ideas for future Gameweeks, especially the double and blank in 36 and 37 respectively. And let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Which chip are you using, and how are you going to tackle all of these remaining doubles and blanks? And let's not forget, Gameweeks 35 and 38 might not be a double or blank, but they're also very important single Gameweeks where things can really change and there could be massive swings in the process. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it insightful, then like this video, subscribe to the channel, and also hit the notification bell to not miss a single uploaded live stream for both FPL and UCL Fantasy. Follow me on X, Instagram and Blue Sky, DylanRCM, and check all the other links in the description for my Patreon and the championships, for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks. The Discord server, FPL and FPL Challenger Leagues, as well as Spotify, can also be found in the description. I'll see you on Saturday for yet another deadline stream, and keep your eyes peeled for more UCL Fantasy videos and content, which is coming up next.